This is a continuation of an article from the Reformed Presbyterian published in October of 1838 entitled The Communion of Saints. And it is remarkable that the Mohammedan imposture arose at precisely the same period. It is ascertained that Muhammad openly avowed and claimed his prophetical authority in the same year, 1606. He is observed by a very late and learned writer of the history of Arabia, this comprehended in the series of popular works published under the title of, quote, Harper's Family Library, unquote, who does not discover any very eager design to make the tenor of historical record bend to an interpretation of inspired prophecy. These two great systems of hostility to the Church of God, simultaneously in their origin and to be contemporaneous in their duration, were then to continue, according to prophetic language, of a day for a year, for a period of 1,260 years. This period has not yet closed, and consequently the Church is yet exposed to the disastrous events ascribed to its continuance. Of these, one of the most signal is here selected by the spirit of prophecy and held up as preeminent among the calamities of the Church. He, that is the anti-Christian power then dominant, shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people. The language is too plain to require a labored explanation. It indicates that the saints, the holy people, should be disunited, divided, and scattered. Their combined power and influence would be paralyzed, and, like an army defeated in battle, and even routed, would be for a long protracted period beyond the possibility of being effectually reunited, reorganized, and combined in their efforts. And this was most painfully illustrated in the events which actually befell the Church in the early period of Christianity. It was advancing in the East in Asia, and in the West in Europe, in all appearance to a glorious conquest. The speculations of false philosophy, the idolatries of the nations, and the impious and oppressive systems of civil misrule were alike assailed, alarmed, and tottering before her march. The Redeemer, seated on a white horse, armed for battle and crowned for dominion, appeared leading on the hosts of the faithful, called and chosen to victory. Revelation 6, verse 2. But soon, too soon, the blighting influence of Antichrist, yet in its infant efforts by heresy, schism, and thirst for a vain preeminence, checked the progress of the Church, and at length, by art and violence, diverted, paralyzed, and defeated her attempts. Europe, the fairest seat of civilization and literature, the Western Asia, not far behind in like advantages, were seized and have been held and are still held in the stern iron and relentless domination of Eastern and Western Antichrist, instead of being occupied by the pure, holy, and peaceful dominion of the Messiah. Often indeed, and at various points since, have the faithful remnant rallied and girded themselves for combat, to wrest from these cruel usurpers their unrighteous power. Many a faithful band of martyrs have assailed their strongholds, much blood has been shed, and efforts most honorable to the spirit of Christianity have been displayed, but they have been all the attempts of a scattered host, enfeebled by disunion and division of time, of place, and even of principles. The north of Europe, the center, and the south have exhibited in succession the power of divine truth, and in the heroic achievements of Wycliffe, of Huss, and the Bohemians, the Waldenses, Luther, Calvin, Knox, and the Covenanters, with a host of worthies, have given almost promise of victory. But they have been beaten back in succession, and the Church even now presents the singular spectacle of scattered hosts, the professed followers in a great degree of these and other elements servants of the Most High, and retaining with various degrees of fidelity the attainments of former times, but still it is a scattered host, and while the dominion of Antichrist in papal Rome survives, such must be its character. Every attempt to overcome this obstacle, while yet providentially interposed, must terminate, as it has often signally terminated, in failure and defeat. The history of the Church has furnished too many instances of such attempts and such failure, attempts, unhappily, both in their nature and in their event, the more unpropitious to her interest, in that they have been both productive and further disunion, and enfeebled besides her true and legitimate vigor against her real and powerful foes. What then will it be said? Are we to desist from every effort to heal the divisions of Zion and to reunite her scattered citizens? Is the providence and is the word of God so absolute as to forbid imperatively and to present a hopeless obstacle? By no means. We are certainly taught to moderate our expectations in this matter, to be the more considerate in the prosecution of so momentous an object, to make existing evils in the divided state of the Church the occasion of more unfeigned humiliation, to leave it more as a matter of prayer to Him who alone can give healing and relief, and to go no further in it than we can be assured of authority from the Word of God, and hope to be prospered by His providence. It is a consideration that should all the souls of all who engage in such undertakings, that they have to deal in this matter, not with puny mortals like themselves, whose sins they may denounce with impunity, and whose infirmities they may deride with safety, nor even with kings and mighty potentates of the earth, but it is with the King of kings, the only potentate, who chastises and none can deliver, who shuts and none can open, who opens and none can shut. Every attempt of this nature that does not bear the divine impress of a heavenly sanction in deep and penitential humility, in fervent and earnest prayer, will utterly fail. God will disown and ultimately blast it. The hearts of the truly humble and pious will revolt at it with fear. It will cover its authors with shame, and the only advantage will issue in a new and successful proof of the strength of divine grace in the hearts of the faithful in their hour of trial. But in the meantime, let judicious efforts for the diffusion of truth, honest efforts to extend a sincere argument in its support, prepare the way for the union of its advocates. The time of the end, in this interesting era, draws nigh. Who can tell but the instruments are now in preparation, that are to act at an early period an important part in the gathering of the people of Shiloh, when He shall come in His latter day glory. A farther obstacle to the accomplishment of an extensive visible communion of the saints in holy ordinances is the lamentable influence of a worldly spirit, sinking to the earth the souls of the servants and people of God. This is indeed a powerful and very successful obstacle, sinful in its nature, practical and efficient in its effects. It is occasioned in part by the divided condition of the heritage of God, and reacts by confirming and fostering that divided state. Whilst the depraved affections of our souls, imperfectly sanctified or wholly unsanctified, are very naturally and easily drawn away by the enticements of worldly associations and worldly gratifications, the comparatively solitary condition of many of the servants and people of God causes them the more easily and successfully to be led captive by such associations and enjoyments as an hour of temptation presents. And hence a worldly spirit encroaches, gains strength, acquires dominion, forbids effort in a way that is right, and succeeds in obtaining it in a way that is wrong. In no case does the adage, "in union there is strength," admit of so just an application as to the interests of religion, personal and social, in the people of God. A few, though intelligent, devout, and faithful, surrounded with many of a different complexion, yield to the preponderating influence of numbers, and embarrassed and disappointed perhaps in expectations and designs, reasonable, legitimate, and useful, gradually lend an ear to calls of inferior moment, devote to them capacity and attainment suited to higher objects, and because they are either foiled in such as they sought or do not meet them in their way, become at last the instruments in service greatly inferior to their own endowments and desires. Not finding before them objects suited to their high calling as servants of the living God, or not meeting with the success their ardent aspirations desired, they gradually yield their attention to minor and present objects, inferior and transitory in their influence upon the church in the age in which they live. These numerous and diversified, because they are little, each selects with his own adherents for his own pursuit, and parts and patches occupy often the attention of minds fitted to grasp and pursue with a holy ambition the whole. Hence the partisan and guerrilla warfare, hence the parties in fact and in form, hence division, multiple division, and generates itself. A like result too frequently attends on minds impatient of the slow progress of divine truth, and the same principle that promotes an excitement or a revival in one turns in another for relief and employment to any specious device which shall promise immediate success and gather around numerous and active attendants. All these circumstances contribute to draw away the minds of the faithful from the one faith, the one order, and the one worship of the house of God, from the one service of the true and living God, to multiple objects of pursuit, and to multiply the parties pursuing, to devote their energies to the prosecution of objects often ending in disappointment, or producing an influence which terminates with their own labors and their own age. A worldly spirit has fostered this small and subordinate employment, a defect of understanding in the spirituality and invisible majesty of the kingdom of Christ.